Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate everyone being here today. Thanks so much for joining us. I think we have a pretty awesome discussion here for us today, looking at automation within the world of accounting. So what we'll be talking about today is anything, automation related, but obviously want to relate this to all of you in your roles. So a couple of housekeeping items and things. If you do have any questions, concerns, etc., feel free to use the chat box. We'll be monitoring that throughout the discussion here today. And to at least get us kind of kicked off and started here, while I'll share my screen from a presentation perspective, I'll let Dokkan and Michael introduce themselves and their role, so that you all meet us. But Dokkan, if you maybe want to get us kicked off, that would be great.
For sure, John. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Dokkan. I'm an automation consultant at eCapital Advisors, and I'm mainly focusing on implementing automation solutions and using RPA tools. So I'll kick it off to Michael to introduce himself.
Thanks, Dokkan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Michael McClure. I'm an RPA consultant here at eCapital Advisors. I've been doing RPA for about 3 years and really hoping to spend today to demystify what RPA is and how you can use it specifically for accounting. So glad you could join us, and we'll get us rolling here.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. And lastly, John Kurth with eCapital. So I lead our automation go-to-market efforts and obviously partner very closely with Michael and Dokkan from a client experience perspective, as well with in ensuring your automation initiatives are met. So just to make sure you guys can see my screen correctly, right?
Looks good to me.
Cool. All right. So as we touched on, what we'll be kind of looking at here today is, what is automation? Why should I or we be automating? And then ideally having that light bulb go off for many of you here today and saying, aha, I now know where that bottleneck process is, where to start and where to get going. So hopefully you walk away with that here. First and foremost, I wanted to highlight this recent Gartner report that came out for top priorities for finance executives. It touches on a couple of great, interesting tidbits and nuggets, but the three things that stuck out to me or to us, and we'll probably have this as a few themes here today, is looking at predictive capabilities. How do we elevate our own team strengths, whether it's overall finance, across the organization, within accounting? How do we get them invested in technology and leveraging technology to make their lives easier? And then just fully leveraging the systems, processes, and employees we have internally. And the fantastic thing is automation can help with all of these. From an overall eCapital perspective, obviously we'll be talking a lot about automation here today, which we really view as kind of the foundational layer for all organizations. But we do support our clients with several other capabilities as well, with performance management, budgeting systems, obviously analytics with modern data hubs and data warehouses, and visualization, as well as advisory work as well. And we actually do that quite often within the automation practice here at eCapital, in terms of working with our clients, not only on better standardizing those processes, but then also, of course, helping from an automation perspective as well. And for those of you that have joined us in the past, we love this question of, if there was the way or an ability to remove the thing you hate the most, or that your team hates doing the most every day, and we could take that away, would you jump at that opportunity to focus on the things that are more fun, more enjoyable, more engaging for our employees and for yourself? I'm sure everyone would say yes. We've really never had someone say no. So it's something that we all want to focus and work on, the work that's most enjoyable and most fulfilling. And what are some of those challenges that organizations face each and every day? Where does this come in terms of those mundane tasks? And the first is consistency challenges. We're all our own unique people, personalities, preferred working styles, and that's actually great and terrific. The challenge with that is that because I do things one way, Dokkan maybe does things slightly different. Of course, they accomplish the same task, but that may have downstream challenges for Michael as he's trying to navigate, okay, where did this come from? Is it John's work? Is it Dokkan's work? Is it Amber's work? Who is it? And then what do I need to do with that? So that can be a huge, time suck for Michael down the road. Then we all know that organizations and businesses become ever complex. There's so many new technologies, new offerings, new latest and greatest digital transformation efforts, out there. And it's so challenging to keep things simple. And then we have to train our employees on this continuously and enable them, which leads to huge time saving. So, or time wasting, I should say. So that can be a huge burdensome thing that we have to do for our employees that, no one really likes. And then if we constantly are grinding our employees and having them do work that they don't find fulfillment or enjoyment in, that's going to ultimately lead to impacts within our culture. And I think we're starting to see this here today with the last year or so, hearing about the Great Resignation and organizations finding so much challenge finding employees. I mean, the three of us actually last week were presenting to a local membership, actually focused on the controllership, and this group spent half of the free dialogue time discussing how are people staying competitive in today's hiring market. What are you doing to keep, existing employees satisfied, not only from a compensation perspective, but from day-to-day operations? And for me, one of the most striking comments came from a finance leader and controller that said, I could not find anyone with the accounting experience that I needed. And for the people that I could find, we simply could not afford them because of their salary and compensation requirements. So I had to advocate and change the mentality internally in the organization to start hiring based on attitude, culture fit, someone that has great work ethic, and I can teach them some of the accounting things. And this gentleman actually did that for 2 employees. He hired them with limited to no accounting experience, taught them some of the accounting things because he just really needed bodies and the people with the right attitude wanting to learn that growth mindset. And I think automation can definitely help with challenges like this. And in a lot of cases, you can get started with automation for less than a full-time employee, sometimes even half what a full-time employee costs the organization. So it's extremely cost effective, and think of automation almost as your own digital workforce that doesn't catch COVID or the flu or the bug, comes to work every single day and is never going to get burnt out. And again, that's really where we see the 3 C's all interacting, and automation always coming back to your well-being and your employees' well-being. So what are some of these, tasks that we do each and every day? Where should I start thinking about where can I automate in our day-to-day? So you see a ton of these common tasks that we do each and every day. And the great thing is there is a sweet spot for automation. There are those common bottlenecks and things that we always put off, procrastinate on, and don't want to do, that throw off our flow and create those hurdles. So if we can focus on automation, taking some of these things and tasks off our plate and our employees' plates, think of what the morale would do in that employee retention in terms of not having to compare two different Excel spreadsheets and make sure that the numbers line up, or sending out a Monday morning report, not having to come in and first thing, run that coffee report and then send it out after you walk away from your computer. So automation complements what we do. It's not going to turn into a iRobot scenario where bots or technology take over the world or take away our job or our employees' job. It truly helps organizations allocate their employees to what's going to move the needle, so that you don't have your employees sitting there saying, I'm not contributing or helping, I'm not doing fulfilling work. With automation, that paradigm totally shifts. So we view automation, and its ultimate goal is to take away those mundane tasks, those things you hate doing, and empower your employees. Now, we've talked a lot about automation, which we really view as kind of the overarching idea of philosophy. But now let's dive into robotic process automation, and really one of the main engines that we're seeing, or solutions to solve some of these business challenges.
Yeah. Thanks, John. So we're going to do kind of a holistic high-level overview of RPA. Like I said, I really want to spend this time to demystify it. So when we get into the tool, we'll really start to pull it apart and understand it. But at a high level, what is RPA? So robotic process automation are software solutions which integrate into your business environment and simulate employee actions. So that second part, simulate employee actions, is really key here. And I always like to bring it back to something that we're all really familiar with for the most part, and that's Excel macros. So anyone who's worked with Excel a bunch is probably familiar with these, has ran some, have seen people ran them, maybe not created them. And they're great, right? They let you automate. It's not a new concept of trying to automate tasks. But the real issue with that is, right, what if I want to automate something outside of Excel? You're limited there. So this RPA concept that allows you to simulate employee actions really opens up a whole new door, right? It doesn't matter whether you want to go to this web page and pull data from there. It doesn't matter if you're using Salesforce and you want to interact with that. Maybe you're using a different CRM, right? All these systems, the same way a human can interact with a variety of systems regardless of the technology, RPA is designed to do the same thing. So it's really taking those previous automation concepts, building upon them to make a more holistic product that can really, like I said, interact with almost any application that your employees are using today. And I always like to highlight this too. This isn't new technology. So RPA and simulating human actions has been around for over 10 years. The real issue was that it's always been locked behind you needed to have a computer science degree or at least programming knowledge in order to do these. Long development times and not really a way to monitor this at an enterprise level. So RPA solutions have basically packaged these 10 years of automation solutions into one platform where you can easily low code, no code, drag and drop automation steps, link them together, deploy those on a schedule, monitor them, have dashboards to see their performance, and really manage this. So again, not new technology, just really taken to that enterprise level where it can be used for large businesses to automate their processes across the organization. So that is the high level overview and how it's different than maybe something like an Excel macro, and we'll get into that later. But just to list off some of the basic capabilities there. So like I said, it can interact with almost any platform out there. So what we see is that what we typically say is, let's focus on your pain points, right? Is your finance department just had a bunch of turnover and you're having trouble in hiring people? Let's look at what processes are time consuming in that department and see which are standardized enough to be automated. Because what we always say is as long as a process can be mapped out start to finish, it can be automated. That's really the key, is as long as there's standardization, automation is possible. So when we take a look across the organization, we have general tasks, right? Data entry. We've all been in there where we're copy and pasting data from an Excel sheet somewhere else. That's going to happen, but it really becomes an issue when someone's doing that every day, right? Let's automate that task and let's have them focus on real value added items. Emailing and burst reporting, data validations, right? Creating custom reports that maybe your system that you're using doesn't have the view that you really want and you can't develop around that, right? Let's have an automation create something custom for you. Specifically talking about accounting and finance, right? AP and AR, we see that a bunch. They're defined processes, but they can be challenging because a lot of times we're getting a bunch of invoices from different invoice templates, and they're coming from different organizations. It can be challenging to manage, but RPA, and that's the demo we have later, is an AP example. We'll go through that and kind of how RPA deals with a process like that. But across the board, right, the real idea is that find your pain points, find what's holding your organization back, and let's find automation there, and let's solve some of those problems. John, anything you want to add here?
The only other thing here that I was going to add as we kind of look at, some specific finance and accounting different use cases, is that you don't necessarily have to look at automating a process from start to completion right out of the get-go. That's, I'd say, a common misconception a lot of organizations think about or struggle with. Let's maybe look at, and I'll just use the report example, is that if we have to go into, let's say, two different systems in terms of logging into our ERP and our CRM every single Monday, download some reports and put that into Excel. Instead of having the employee go in and download those reports, is let's leverage automation to do that, but then have the employee come to their inbox on Monday morning and see that output report, and then they can do whatever they need to do. Maybe it's, some initial data validation before they email it out. So be thinking about as well, even smaller segments or subsets of a process that cause issues, take time, or people don't like doing, and just get started there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. A lot of times I think we always say RPA is a journey, right? Start small, crawl, walk, run. And I think a lot of times people see that process out there that can be automated, but it can be challenging to start there, right? So really it's building up your organization's experience and knowledge base with automation, and eventually over the years, building up more and more until you're really seeing your ROI, right? You have 100 processes out there that are automated. That doesn't happen overnight, and it's definitely a journey. And we obviously, as partners, try to enable you as much as possible throughout that.
Mm-hmm. For some of these, Michael, that we have listed here, specific to finance and accounting, and obviously we're not able to walk through every single one of these different use cases, but maybe it would be helpful to, touch on some of the customer stories that you've seen and done of, where organizations get started, or maybe, automating a process or two listed here.
Yeah. So I think a good place to start is an example around billing. So, and this is a common challenge. An organization had a team of people taking their invoices and billing their clients for the work that they performed, right? And they were really struggling with turnover. It seemed like anytime they hired someone in this position, they'd be there for less than a year, and then they'd have to train someone else. And the downstream cost was really the main issue, right? These people that were constantly turning over, making a lot of mistakes in the invoicing process. And what they set out to do is say, hey, this is a standardized process. Let's see if we can automate it instead of going down the just hiring and turning through people route. So what we're able to do is take a team of 5 people, reduce that down to a team of 1 person who was just validating the data at the end. and completing that entire invoicing process, right? So downloading the invoice, scanning that information to digitize it, logging into their billing platform, which was web-based, taking those invoice line items, creating them, and then actually submitting that invoice to their customer. So again, huge savings in terms of time on people actually executing on this task, but also the consistency was huge. We found issues where they had some rates that were over $50 off of what they should be, $50 an hour. So as soon as we rolled this out, it really became eye-opening where it was, oh my gosh, we have way more issues with master data than we originally thought. And having this bot that relies or has a consistent process, really light bulbs went off. So that's a great example of throwing out RPA and finding way more than we expected, right? We thought we were just going to go through and automate that process, but there was a bunch of other hidden benefits. Another one that we're working on recently is actually in treasury. So reconciliation. And this is common, is that you're going to have transactions from, I'm going to say 8 of the largest banks. And typically someone's going to have to log into each one, pull that transaction data, and then verify it against their own systems to try to do that reconciliation. What we went ahead and did, and starting off in pieces, right, is let's go to each bank, let's pull that transactional data, let's load that into Excel, and then until we build trust and make sure that this process is working, we'll have that person take the data and do the validation themselves, actually finish the reconciliation. Ultimately, right after people felt comfortable with that initial process, the data is correct every day, we expanded that to say, let's have the bot actually do that verification too. So building up in steps there, kind of like John was talking about earlier, is a good way to get started. And those are just 2 really common cases. And I feel like anytime I'm talking to accounting people and I say automating cash rec, people light bulbs go off. So I always like to call that one out too.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, a great point to what we call kind of the fast start programs or a low hanging fruit area. This is by no means, all encompassing, but just from our work with clients and Michael Dokon, feel free to, add additional color here, just where we typically see the biggest time savings for organizations and that immediate ROI to get you started on the journey.
Yeah, these are, I would say, just processes that tend to really see ROI there. And what our main pain points, right? We hear these a lot from clients, especially AP, AR, and this invoice processing is a huge one, and why we want to show that off today. But across the board, right? Maybe your organization's totally fine in accounting, but how about operations, right? Supply chain management. I truly believe that there's room for automation in every organization of size, because there's just so many tasks that we're doing that typically aren't value added.
And just to add something further, when you're a process, there's always going to be exceptions. Our idea is to automate the bulk so that you get rid of those chores and you can focus on what matters, what needs attending. So you can always have like those exception cases that needed human like supervision, but like the chore, the bulk is done through the bot itself.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I hear this all the time, but in this one case, it does this, and then we have to reach out to the customer, so we can't automate that. You can totally automate that still, right? So let's run through all the data, and everything that's successful, we'll put that into a log, and no one needs to worry about it. But if they did want to audit that, they could. At the same time, when we run into these exceptions, there's no reason that we can't streamline that process and get it to a person, right? So imagine the bot runs overnight, you get there Monday morning, and in your inbox is a list of all the actions that all the items that you actually need to action. You have 90% successes, but then you have 10% that maybe you, like I said, need to reach out to a customer and actually have a conversation to resolve, or call the bank and understand why this transaction was this way. Again, those are the value added tasks. Sifting through the other 90% that were correct wasn't value added. It's the 10% where you actually need to action that we really want to streamline. Yeah. So like I said, this is a quote to cash process, just a nice visual. But when we take a look at a process like this, we find that we have so many hands involved and a number of different processes, right? We're talking about Salesforce, and then we have a PDF that gets uploaded to Dropbox, and then we have a DocuSign. Emails need to be sent, and then it goes into Excel, right? There's all these applications and processes. And if you tried to automate them all individually, you'd be talking to 10 different consultants, a Salesforce developer, and then you'd have to talk to maybe someone that does Excel macros and Outlook macros. Way too time consuming, not worth the value. The thing with the RPA, like I said earlier, is simulating human actions. It's able to interact with all these systems out of the gate. So when we implement RPA, maybe breaking them up in steps as we develop, but ultimately, instead of waiting for an email to be answered, instead of someone logging into a system to kick it off to the next system, the bot can take all these tasks and do it almost immediately. So we turn a process that would take 30 days with a bunch of human hands involved into a 5-day process, which is way better customer service, right? And it's going to ultimately change how your business operates, right? Changing quote to cash from 30 days to 5 days is a complete change in operations, right? There's huge value there beyond just saying we're not having humans doing this anymore.
Yep.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take over screen sharing, and we are going to actually build a couple bots together before we get into this AP/AR demo, because I think we have a lot of these conversations and people want to know what it looks like. What's it like to interact with this tool? Because at the end of the day, it's low code, no code. We want your end business users to interact with it and creating their own automations. So to help with that goal, let's take a look at RPA software and start to understand it and what we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. See it all right, John? Dokkan?
Yep.
Perfect. So we're going to be in Automation Anywhere today. It's our preferred RPA vendor, but there's multiple out there. The two big players you're going to hear are Automation Anywhere and UiPath. Personal recommendation is choose one of those. They're the market leaders and they have the most capabilities. Automation Anywhere is our RPA vendor of choice. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here and actually create an automation together. So this is the platform. It's all in the cloud. And like I said, there's a lot of these tasks that we're talking about: managing users, managing devices, credentials. And this is what I mean about how RPA has changed the game. It has created this platform where it's a one-stop shop. Everything's managed here. You don't need that computer science degree to set any of this up. So what we'll do is hop into this automation tab. And what we will do is go ahead and create a new bot. Anytime we do this, we end up in this new instance. And it is, like I said, drag and drop, low code, no code. And they've built in these 10 years of automation functions out for you. What I mean by that is that, say we wanted to automate something with the PDF file. We can come over to these actions here, type in PDF, and we immediately see we have all these actions related to PDFs. Merge documents together, extract data from these PDFs. So it's really a search for what you want, and more likely than not, you'll find it. So let's take a look at Excel, for instance. We have all these actions here for Excel right out of the gate that we can interact with. You don't need to be a software developer to do this. What I mean by that is, let's actually build an automation together. So that Excel macro case is a great starting point to dip your toes into the water with automation. What I mean by that is we can create Excel macro automations with about 4 lines of code and start adding value to your organization. Every organization I've talked to typically has multiple of these, and they can take 20 minutes to run, and they need to be refreshed every morning, and that becomes an employee task to do. Let's take a look at automating that. So what I'm going to do is, we have this Excel sheet here, just call it run my macro, and we have some data in here. Right now, it's sorted by bin. What we really would want to do is sort it by the days remaining before it goes over age and email that out. So let's build that out together. So what I'm going to do is start dragging in some steps. So this is going to be open Excel. Go ahead and save that. You can see that's been generated here. Like I said, I'm going to type in Excel because I want to automate something in Excel. I'm going to find the open command, because the first thing we're going to need to do is open that file. I'm going to go ahead and point it to this correct file, run my macro. And immediately you'll see that, give it a session. Let's see what this does. Let's just run it, right? So we have one command in here. It's just opening this Excel file. Go ahead and run this bot. We'll see exactly that. This Excel file will come up and open. Perfect. So the macro that we want to run is actually already in the sheet, and it is just called sort. So this is if you have an existing macro, you can just call it. So after we open it, let's search macro. We'll find the command, run macro. The name of the macro was called sort. So we'll just tell it to run that, and we're using the same session we opened it as, and that is it. So next thing we'll do is just close the file because we want to save it, save on closing, same session name, and that's it. So that's what I mean, that this is a great place to start and an easy way to add immediate value with this software. Take your Excel macros that need to run every day, and in 3 lines of code, you can get this started and scheduled. But typically the next thing we'd want to do is actually distribute this information. So I'll drop a new step in here. I'll call it email. And then you can believe it, we are just going to search email in here and see what we get. So I see send email. I'll drag and drop that in. It says email server. If we just select Outlook, it'll automatically take our Outlook profile, and then we can go ahead and send it that document that we ran the refresh on. So I will put that in here, and I will just email it to myself. So we'll go ahead and run this full automation. If I fill that out, should be good. Go ahead and run this whole automation now. And it'll run super quick. We'll barely see it. It's a really short macro. Perfect. So you saw there, it opened the sheet, saw some data changes, and then it went through. If we go ahead and take a look over at my email, we'll see email check file. And if we go ahead and take a look at it, we'll see that we actually have that file, but now it is sorted from that macro by days remaining. So like I said, really easy way to get started and add value. 3 lines of code and then email it out. Don't need a computer science degree to do it. I would just want to stress that a bunch. The end goal is to have people on your teams have access to this software and be able to create their own automations. It's really empowering, and that's what we always say, right? It's about enabling your employees. It's not about replacing them. It's about making them work more efficiently and focus on those tasks. So this could be done with an Excel macro. Obviously, we're using one, but how do we take it to the next level? How do we say, hey, let's automate this fully? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and steal a website URL here real quick that I want to work with. Comment in here just so I can keep this here. So I just threw a URL in here, and at this URL is some data that we actually want to load into Excel. So this is kind of the next step in using some of those simulated human actions. Let's log into a system. Let's grab the data that's in there on a daily basis. Let's load it into Excel. Then let's run our sorting macro, and then let's email it out. So now we've kind of gone beyond what you could just do in Excel. So let's create a new step, and we'll call it access data. And this is going to be from a browser. What I'm going to do while we're testing this is disable these other actions until we work through this. So in my actions, I'll go ahead and search browser. Take that and copy my link. I'm going to say open in Chrome, and let's open up that page. So just to make sure this works, let's go ahead and run it. Everything's disabled other than this one open browser action. So what we should see is this URL come up. Perfect. And what we see here is that we need to log in. Not an uncommon task, right? Anytime you access a system in your business, you're most likely going to have to log in unless you're SSO. So let's handle that. What we're going to do is use this button up here to start recording. And what this does will actually record the actions we take on that web page and turn them into code for us. So it's really easy to use. All you need to do is click around and interact with the website how you typically would, and you'll see that turned into code. So I'm going to refresh. You see this window came up here. Sorry, it's a little small. And what I'm going to say is I want to interact with this window. I'll hit Universal Recorder. You can see as I interact with this page now, it's picking up elements on the page that I can interact with. So what we want to do is type in my email. Perfect. We will hit continue. And then in password, I'm going to go ahead and just type in password for now. You'll see why in a second. Then we'll hit login. Obviously, that didn't work because I just typed in a password. But you can see after we hit finish, we automatically generated code that we can use. So I will just move this under the browser tab, and we can take a look at this. So we can see that screenshot we got is saying we're going to interact with this element, and we're going to set its text to this. I made a mistake, and it'll pick up all your mistakes. So I'm going to delete that part and just leave my correct email. Perfect. Next part is, looks like I clicked it twice. Or wait, maybe. Looks like it missed that continue click, which is fine. We'll just go ahead and re-grab that. So I will just copy this, hit recapture, automatically brings me back, hit continue there. There we go. And we will tell it to left click on that box. Next thing we see, email, don't need that one. Password, set text. And we're going to use my actual password here. So immediately it detects it's a password field and it says you can use an insecure string, but not best practice. So we're going to grab my actual password and we won't see what it is. I already have it stored. So we've created a credential for Confluence and the attribute is password. So if I put that in here, I promise you my password is not password. You can try this later if you want, but that's the password credential. And we'll just give it a little delay there so it can click into it. And then we'll hit login. So let's go ahead and run this. Close our environment, go ahead and hit run. And now this should open the web page and log in for us. And then we'll have access to that data that we wanted to get to. Not me, hands are up. Perfect. And you can see that this table is here now, and this is the data that we want to grab. So I can create a new step, call it load data. And I'm going to do something different this time. You can use Universal Recorder or you can search Recorder and grab it this way. Go ahead and refresh. It's grabbing our windows and I want to interact with this inventory data page. I'm going to hit capture object. And again, you'll see this red highlighting. Well, see, as I clicked on this table, it automatically detected this was a table element. So I'm going to say, get the table, the entire table, and save it to capture data table. Just like that, we're able to extract that data. So let's enable these Excel actions now, because we want to load this in. So now that we have the data, the main thing that we'll want to do, open the file, but we don't want to immediately sort. I fortunately created a macro that will clear this sheet called clear. So we'll open the file, we'll clear any data that's currently in there, and then we will write from data table. So that data table that we just grabbed, captured data, and we'll start at cell A1. Go ahead and do that. So This entire process now should be completed. We will log into this web page. We will grab the data that we need. We will open Excel, clear it, write that data, sort it with our macro, save the file, and then close out. So that'll be the entire process flow. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and log out. And let's see if this executes correctly. And you can see, I know I've said it a bunch, but this is not something where you need a degree to get started with this. You saw me point and click how I would normally interact with the web page in a generated code, which is really, really convenient. That's not how it was 10 years ago. There was a much more complicated process to figure everything out. So we can see it did exactly that. Got into this web page, ran the macros, and you'll see we have that exact same file. You can open and access it, and it's sorted how you want. So this is a quick example of how you can add value and create a bot. It's been, what, 10 minutes, and we've created this process already. Obviously, I do have a bit of experience, but this is something that your team with a little bit of training can start doing on their own and start automating their own Excel sheets and get rid of some of those tasks that they hate doing. I love getting those emails. They're like, I'm so glad I don't have to do this every morning because it's always been a pain for me. That's really the goal. And that employee is going to enjoy working more and engage more with their work. So that is the kind of general overview of the platform, kind of how we create code. How will we start creating this simple bot? I'll pause here before I show that AP demo. If there's any questions, throw them in chat. More than happy to answer them. Well, I don't see any questions right now, so I will go ahead and jump over to that AP process. So this is an overview of the process that we've created for a demo. So what we have here is we have a vendor sending an invoice to us. Typically, right, they're going to go to an AP inbox. And we would typically have an employee scan these and fill out the billing, but we're going to automate that process. So after we receive the invoice, we'll use Automation Anywhere to download it directly from Outlook. Then we'll use Automation Anywhere's IQ bot to process the data, right? Use machine learning, neural network technology to dynamically understand that document and extract the needed data. IQ bot's a whole kind of other process. I don't want to get too much into the weeds of that right now, but that's the general overview. It'll extract data from our invoices for us. From that, it'll create a CSV where we can actually have all that data in line items. From there, we could log into a system and actually complete that invoice. So in this example, it's SAP. We would log in, take all that extracted data, line item by line item, list them out. And then at the end, right, do verification. If everything matches, we go ahead, fill that out, send the email. It's been approved and they get payment. If we find issues, maybe the final bill numbers don't line up because of some tax issue, we could send that off to a human to say, hey, take a manual look at this because there's a data error, right? Maybe we're a couple cents off for taxes. It's something that we see pretty often. So this is the kind of flow diagram of the process, but let's actually bring it back and take a look at the code. So the files that we're going to be looking at are going to be these. So we have created some mock eCapital invoices here for clothing. What IQBot will do is look at this invoice, extract data, who is it being billed to, what are the dates, what are the balance, what are the line items, and then log into our Jot form and input that data. So I will jump over to our invoice processing demo, go ahead and get this started. Cool. And just so you know, this is a job form. Like I said, this could be your ERP system. This could be SAP, Oracle, whatever it is, it's able to interact with. But we'll interact with this form and fill it out. So I'll go ahead and run it. And actually, let me drag open my email so you can see the emails come across. There we go. I'm having the bot send the emails to myself just because it's easier, and otherwise I'll forget to attach the invoice or something. So the bot's going to send the emails here. In typical, right, you'd just have them coming across as needed. So we see here we have invoices ready for processing. The bot will go ahead and start reading through those invoices. So it's open this first one, digitize that data, and it's going to go one by one through those unread messages and find that data. Basically generating a CSV, like I said, so that we can actually take that data and action it later on. So the second invoice is read. Third one. And the fourth one. Awesome. So now that we have the data from our Outlook email, we'll go ahead and input that. So you can see it's moving on its own way faster than I could ever type, and it'll go through this process, submitting each invoice, and we'll continue it until it's finished. So we should see 4 of these. And again, all this was created with just that record capture feature I was showing earlier. Click on the box, input the data that you want, and then it basically generates that code. The only thing here is that we've looped it to read from the CSV file what that data is. Instead of me saying type in the email, we're saying grab that email from the first column of the Excel sheet. So there you go. That process is finished. You can see that these emails went from read. Said that backwards twice. They went from unread to read as we processed them. And obviously we can save the Excel files off somewhere on your network so that you have everything organized by company, by vendor, however you wanted to do it. So really trying to bring organization to this process and make sure that people aren't monitoring email inboxes and having to manage that on their own, because it's easy to miss an email. We've all done it, and it causes downstream issues, even if it's an accident, right? So that is the invoice processing one. It looks like we have a little bit of time, and this one's quick. I won't do a bunch of explaining on it, but we do have cash rec as well. So more or less, this is showing interacting with Excel more, because Excel is typically a place that we start a lot with because people are comfortable with it. This is information from our ERP system with the receipts, and then we would go to the bank and grab transactional data. This is all fake data. I would love to show logging into a bank and actually grabbing this, but I don't think our clients are going to let us log into their bank and show it for you. So this is all just kind of fake data, but in production, right, we would log into your banking systems and grab this data. What we'll do is basically go through this and verify all the receipts we have match transactions with the bank. So if we go ahead and run this real quick, mostly what we'll see is Excel interaction. So it's read through all that data, and now it's going to type faster than anyone can type. Fun fact, these bots can type about 550 words per minute. The fastest human on earth can type it about 220 words per minute. Just knowledge for you. But yeah, bots obviously do this way faster than any human could. It's going to go through anything that is successful will go to the import log. Anything that we can't verify will go to the exception log. And then, of course, we will have an email with that output that will have everything that we just ran through. So import log, everything we were able to verify. And then our manual log, we'll see we weren't able to match that back to an invoice number. So that's a quick cash rec. I see we have a question about dual factor authentication. It's funny, I just gave this presentation recently and I got that. So the recommendation for dual factor authentication is to turn it off for that specific bot service account. And that's typical. What does it look like when the process fails? Sorry, I'm reading questions too. So multi-factor authentication can be an issue for automation. There's definitely ways to work around it, right? Especially if you can send a verification code through email. You saw we're able to monitor an email inbox. So that's one way to work around it, is that we can actually get the verification code and submit it. typically what we'll recommend is to have a bot account, right? So any system should have its own account for RPA. The ability to turn off that multi-factor authentication is the easiest solution. And I know there's some security concerns there. What we typically do is set a really strong password, right? No human is going to be typing out this password, so we can make it 36 characters with special characters and make sure that that password is secure as possible. But multi-factor authentication can sometimes be an issue if the system does not allow you to turn it off and maybe has a voice call that it has to go through. Bots are not great at reading voices yet and answering the phone. So that is definitely something to consider if you know your system has to have multi-factor authentication and it's only through something like text. It may not be worth it to automate on that system unless you're able to kind of resolve that issue with IT. And then when the process fails was the other question that we got. So when this process fails, what we would do is set it up so that in any stage in the process, if it fails, you would get an email report immediately that says this bot went to execute and it failed to run on this step. So you can see these try catches here. That's basically how we catch exceptions and then send them. So on this catch, you can see that we can grab the error messages itself and then send them. So you can immediately get an email notice that says this bot failed on this line because of this. And then also some that was talking about managing this. If we go back to do our in progress and historical, we can come into this platform and see everything that's currently running, everything that's ran historically, whether it completed, whether it failed. And then finally, we also have these dashboards. When you throw bots into production, they will automatically generate in some of these dashboards, and you can also customize them. But it gives you a quick high-level view of what's ran today, what's currently running today, which bots have been successful, which bots have been failing out and maybe need some more development or testing work. So it's going to happen. Bots are going to fail because, a website changes, a password changes that shouldn't have. But there's always a way to kind of grab that information and develop it in a way so that when it happens, you immediately are notified of it. So you can get a developer or a business user on there to resolve it. Cool. Well, we're coming up at the top of the hour. So I will quickly just talk through these last two slides here. So automation journey, right? And I know I said this before, you're not going to buy, automation software and then a month later have 100 automations and have huge ROI savings. You have to learn the tool and educate, build some process governance there. You don't want the wild west of automations running around there. So really, we're looking at a 1.5 year long timeline to really get scaled up and get to the point where you have developers in all areas of your business creating bots, managing them, and being successful. Then finally, right, we always, when we're evaluating processes, we always like to talk about this matrix. What's the business value of automating this process and what's its complexity? Trying to place that when you're scoping out processes, trying to place them somewhere on this graph, right? If we automate this, what would be the time savings versus how many systems are we interacting with? How complicated is it? And really, right, typically, if you don't have any automation, you can find something in this best zone to get started with. And that's really what we want to focus on. Quick wins, right, to start. With that.
Yeah, just to kind of wrap up here, we'll stay on for a few more minutes. If anyone does have any questions, we'd love to have you join us at one of our future eCapital events. We've listed a few of our upcoming meetups. Obviously, all can be found on our website, but all of these are just great opportunities to connect with peers and folks like Michael and Dokkan that can provide some additional information on what the best practices are and some of that feedback loop for your initiatives as well. I think lastly, if anyone does have any questions after the fact, Michael, on the next slide, I think I listed my contact information, but feel free to grab that or through eCapital's website or contact information as well. Definitely happy to address any questions, but thanks so much again for sticking with us here throughout the presentation, the great questions. And again, happy to address any questions through chat here at the very end.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for spending time with us today. And like John said, love talking about RPA. So if there's questions, follow-ups, want to take a look at a process that you currently have together that's a pain point, more than happy to, set up a follow-up meeting and talk through some of that.